Women have been fighting for their reproductive rights for decades. The first major landmark Supreme Court decision in favor of women's rights was in 1965. Griswold v. Connecticut overturned a Connecticut statute prohibiting the use of birth control by married people on the grounds that the right to marital privacy protects the access of married couples to contraceptives. 7 years later, the court made another stride forward and overturned a law prohibiting the distribution of birth control to unmarried couples in 1972 with Eisenstadt v. Baird. The most well-known Supreme Court decision came in 1973. With Roe v. Wade, the court ruled that a Texas law prohibiting abortions not necessary to save the life of a woman was unconstitutional. This decision extended the fundamental right to privacy to a woman's decision to choose abortion for any reason. Soon after this, the court allowed for another victory in reproductive rights. In 1976, Planned Parenthood of Central Missouri versus Danforth decided against a Missouri statute that would force a married woman to obtain her husband's approval before getting an abortion, and ruled against a written parental consent requirement for minors. After this decision in 1976, the court started allowing for more restrictions on reproductive rights. Mayer v. Roe in 1977, Harris v. McRae in 1980, and Webster v. Reproductive Health Services in 1989 all deal with restriction based upon what is deemed medically necessary. These decisions limited the public and federal Medicaid funding for abortions, and Webster deemed that prohibiting the use of public employees and public facilities for abortions was constitutional. In 1992, the Supreme Court refused to overturn Roe with Planned Parenthood of Southern Pennsylvania versus Casey, but upheld a long list of abortion restrictions such as parental consent, anti-abortion counseling, and a waiting period, while only invalidating spousal notification. According to ProChoice.org, during the 1980s and early 1990s, clinic protests and blockades were on the rise. Violence against abortion providers was escalating across the country, culminating in the murder of Dr. Gunn by Michael Griffin in March of 1993 outside a Pensacola, Florida clinic, and the murder of Dr. Tiller in August of 1993 outside his Wichita, Kansas clinic. These incidents created urgency in Congress to pass new federal legislation to address the violence committed against reproductive health care facilities and providers and denial of access to women seeking their services. In 1994, Congress enacted the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or FACE Act, which makes it a federal crime to use force, the threat of force, or physical obstruction to prevent individuals from obtaining or providing reproductive health care services. In 2000, the FDA approved mifepristone, or RU-486, following a 16-year struggle by reproductive rights activists to have the safe and effective abortion drug approved. Opponents have made repeated efforts to prevent approval and distribution of mifepristone and are continuing efforts through a petition to the FDA to have the drug withdrawn. In 2001, the Bush administration reinstated the global Gag Rule, which was first adopted in 1984 by the Reagan administration and later lifted by President Clinton. The Gag Rule has caused 430 organizations in over 50 countries to stop performing abortions or speaking about abortion laws in order to qualify for U.S. funding. Over 80,000 women around the world die each year from unsafe and illegal abortions, and hundreds of thousands suffer complications from unsafe abortions. The first federal ban on an abortion procedure since Roe v. Wade came in 2003 when Congress and President Bush passed and signed the partial birth abortion ban, which does not include an exemption to preserve a woman's health. In 2004, the House passed the Unborn Victims of Violence Act of 2003. For the first time, federal law established a fetus as a legal person with individual rights separate from pregnant women. The March for Women's Lives also took place in 2004, which targeted Bush-era abortion regulations. It was the largest protest to ever occur in D.C. 1.4 million protesters spoke out against restrictions on abortion and birth control and many other issues involving anti-LGBT and feminist sentiments. In more recent news, many states have been introducing bills into their state legislatures that are trying to severely limit women's access and right to reproductive services. In March of this year, Georgia spoke about HB 954, which makes it illegal to obtain an abortion after 20 weeks, even if the woman is known to be carrying a stillborn fetus or the baby is otherwise not expected to live to term. One state representative, Terry England, spoke out in favor of the bill, saying that,
life gives us many experiences. It gives us the experience, or I've had the experience of delivering calves, dead and alive, delivering pigs, dead and alive. And I want to tell you, Representative McCall, Representative Roberts, all of us, Representative Anderson, that have done that, Representative Black, that have done that, it breaks our hearts to see those animals not make it.
Arizona also introduced a bill this year that concerns abortion. Arizona House Bill 2625, authored by Majority Whip Debbie Lesko from Glendale, would permit employers to ask their employees for proof of medical prescription if they seek contraceptives for non-reproductive purposes, such as hormone control or acne treatment. Many people feel that the bill will impose on women's rights to keep their medical records private. Proponents of the bill claim religious freedom should allow them not to approve birth control for their employees' insurance if it is against their moral beliefs. But what about the employees' religious freedom and right to privacy? Reproductive rights have been a hot topic in the Republican primary this year as well. Many of the candidates have voiced their opinions concerning abortion and birth control, most of which have cast a grim shadow on how the country may move backward if they are elected president and follow through with their opinions. One of the most troubling things about all the legislation and decisions being made about abortion and other reproductive rights is that the majority of these decisions are being made by men and men alone, who feel that they have the authority to choose what a woman should and should not be able to do with her own body. Recently, a woman was barred from speaking on an all-male panel about birth control for being an inappropriate witness. The panel claimed that the third-year law student had no authority to speak about her experiences with birth control. Our country appears to be heading backward down a path toward an even more stifling patriarchy, and we need to act now to prevent that from happening. Support Planned Parenthood and other organizations like it to keep women's reproductive health in the hands of women.